Hello friends, this is your instructor. In the last session we have discussed about how we can write a very small and simple programs using Python to solve some daily life problems. We have started our journey by defining some variables which can store raw data which can be captured from sensor or from any real-time database. After that, we have processed that data using some operators in Python. So we have discussed lots of operators like arithmetic operators, logical operators, relational operators, or comparison operators, or even bitwise operators. Once we perform some operation on the data, the meaningful information can be extracted from the data. And we have done this, we have extracted some meaningful information after performing some operations, and for the same we have discussed different simple programs using Python. Now it's time to take a decision based on that meaningful information, or whatever information we have extracted. We can take some judgments or decision using decision control statements in Python. Now why it is important, why decision control is important in programming? Basically, when we talk about our daily life, we are continuously taking some decisions based on certain situation or based on some conditions in front of us. So whether to go to college or not to go college, what kind of career to choose. So every action of human being is dependent on certain decisions. So we are taking some decision based on some real-time data or whatever information we have. Based on that information, we are taking some decision in our daily life. Similarly, when I talk about the IoT, artificial intelligence, or machine learning, the machine must be able to take a decision, that must be capable of taking some automatic judgment or decision. Now that is possible using decision control statements in Python. So there are basically three different structures in Python which will allow us to take some decision. The number one is if statement, number two is if else statement, and number three is if, elif, and else statement. Even you can have a nested if else statement, that means if inside the if statement. So that also we can discuss while taking some decision in Python. So whenever we have a single condition and the only one outcome of it, or only one option after fulfilling that condition, we have to go with if statement. If we have single condition and multiple options, two options in this case, then in that case we have to choose if else statement. And if we have multiple conditions and multiple options than two, or you can say multiple options or more than two options and more than two conditions, in that case you have to go with if, elif, and else kind of structure. So clearly writing else statement is optional in programming, so it's up to the programmer whether he has to give some default condition or from default to the programmer. So now we'll start actual programming for this kind of if else structure. Now I'll open the IDE. So as you know, the shortcut will not be automatically created on the desktop, but you can create it if you want. And secondly, you can start the Python IDE or Python shell from the Windows search. Now I have opened Python IDE or the Python shell here, and now we can start using some if statement in our program. Now the example that I am going to consider will be a very simple example. What I am going to do, I just want to control my ceiling fan if the room temperature is greater than 35 degrees centigrade. So I'll be doing a very simple example where if the room temperature is greater than 35 degrees centigrade, the fan should start. So this kind of simple example I am going to execute using the decision control statement. Here the real-time room temperature will be input, and there will be a condition that whether that temperature is greater than or equal to 35 or not. If it is greater than 35 degree, then our system has to take automatic decision using a if statement. So that's why here decision control statement is important, and here we'll discuss how the machine can take a decision based on that real-time room temperature. So I'll open this new file, and here I'll take a temperature as a variable, which will be a real-time temperature. And as we know that the input function can be used to take the real-time temperature. So in actual case, there could be a temperature sensor on which we will be getting the temperature. This time, as we are not having, or we are not interfacing any kind of sensor, so what I'll do, I'll just use here some input function, and will ask the user to enter the room temperature in order to simulate our code. So please enter the room temperature. So here we'll ask the user to enter the room temperature. But wait, as we know, the input function always returns the result in string format, but not in the integer format. But that's why unfortunately we need the integer values here, not the string value, because the temperature will be an integer number. Of course, it can be a floating point number as well, like 20.4, but for this particular application, or for this particular practical, let us assume that temperature is to be a whole number or the integer value. So here you have to typecast these to integer. So I'll write int, and in bracket input, please enter the room temperature. Now the user will enter the room temperature, and that will be available in temp variable. So what we have to do, simply just have to take a decision. If this temperature is greater than 35, in that case the fan should start. So just I write fan on. Okay, and nothing else. So here the important thing that you have to understand, the syntax of if statement. The if statement, you'll write like this: if, you can use these brackets, or even you can skip this bracket, if temperature is greater than 35, and then colon, and after that if you hit enter, automatically this line is shifted towards right by 4 different spaces, 4 spaces. This is called as indentation in Python. So this is very important thing, as in C language, if I have to do this thing in C language, so let's discuss this thing in case of C as well. So if I am trying to write the same thing in the C language, so how it will look like. So initially, obviously, you have hash include, then stdio.h, and obviously you have a void main function, and then you will have int temperature, and then you write print or printf function here, and in bracket what will write enter the temperature. Okay, so I'm writing in short, and here we'll scanf that scanf, then %d, and of course comma and %temp. So it will be taken as integer value. Okay, obviously the semicolon after every statement is required in C language, and then you will write here if statement. If temperature is greater than 35, and then this is important, this you have to understand, printf fan on. So this is how you write the things in C language. So that is very much interesting thing. So the entire code will take these many lines. So clearly, if you compare these things with the Python, so hardly 3 lines of code is required here, but you can see the couple of lines of code is here, and again it is not that much readable and very much difficult to understand. Here again, it is not required that you should know this particular programming language or this C programming language. It's totally fine, but I'm just giving example. If this is done in other programming language, how you have to write the code. Now here it is very important. Just observe this if statement. Now this printf statement is the part of this if statement, or it belongs to this if statement, and it is indicated by using these curly brackets. So even if I write one more statement here, printf or printf again, and fan is still on, something like this. Again, this statement is the part of this if. How we can come to know? This is because of this opening and closing curly bracket. So this is the body of this if statement, and inside that, whatever number of statement you will write, that belongs to this if statement. But this is not the case in case of Python. So if you check out here in Python, there is no opening and closing curly brackets. So the curly brackets are not used. So how to identify which statement belongs to the if statement? This is identified using some void spaces, before this line. If the statement is separated right by some spaces, that means that is the part of this thing, this if statement. So let's try to understand this thing again. So I just not saving this code. If you write a statement, one more statement like print, and here fan is still on, again this statement is the part of if statement. But if you write like this, print out of if, now this statement is not the part of if statement, as it is not shifted towards right by some spaces, as it is not indented, so it is not the part of this if statement. So this is how it is very much important in Python. These spaces are critically important in Python, because if you give wrong number of spaces, automatically there will be a problem. Now let's run this code first. I'm not using this thing, so let's comment this thing and again comment this thing. So these two things are not required, okay, or otherwise I'll hit too many enters here, so that you can come to know. And again I'll just write like this, and multi-line comment indicating that this is the multi-line comment. Okay, so it is required to save this code, so I just save it fan control by the name fan control and save. So let's run this code and just test it whether it's happening. So initially now it is asking enter the room temperature, expecting some value from the user. Let's say I put 30. Nothing has happened. Triple arrow is here, so nothing has happened. That means the temperature is not greater than 35 degrees centigrade, so nothing was executed. So the fan on statement was not executed. Now let's run one more time, and this time I'll put 37, which is greater than 35. Let's check what happens this time. This time the fan is on. Okay, so this is the clear difference. So what happened if this statement is true? So whatever condition you are writing here, it is true. In that case, the statement inside this will be executed. Now important thing is that, what is this? This is the comparison operator, and we have discussed this thing initially, that what is the result of this comparison operator. So the result is always true or false. So if the result of this statement is true, the statement inside the if statement will be executed. If the result of this condition or this statement is not true, that means false, the whatever written inside the if will not be executed. That we have tested. Now if I automatically, it is taking 4 number of spaces. What if I give no spaces? Will it be error in Python? Clearly, as per the definition is concerned, as there is no indentation, clearly there will be error. As there is no void spaces, clearly there will be an error during running this code. So let's try to run this by clicking F5, and here we go. There is a clear-cut error message. Expected an indented block. That means it is expecting some indentation here or some void spaces before the print statement. So let's do it. So by putting a tab space, it will give 4 number of spaces, and this time we will be able to run this. So if I put 35, which is not greater than 35, the condition is still false, so the fan should not be on. Yeah, and here it is happening. Now it's very much to give some void spaces before the print statement. If you do not give void spaces, that will be the problem in the programming, or that will read unwanted result, or it will generate some error message. What if I give a single space using this thing, just a space bar? Will it be the problem? So let's try to run this. So if I run this code, it's totally fine, no worries about it. Even if I put 45, the fan is on in this case. So how many spaces you give, it's up to you, it's up to the programmer, but at least there has to be a single void space. If you do not give any space, that means that statement is not the part of if statement, and at least there has to be a single if statement inside the if. Otherwise if statement cannot be a blank statement. So that is very much important thing. If you want to have a blank if statement, if you do not want to write anything inside the if, so there is an option that you can put a pass statement. If you write a pass statement, that is also correct. So in this case it will not show any kind of error. So here we go. And if you put this blank, what if I put the blank statement in if, what will happen? Let's try to run this thing. So if you run this code, so it is expecting an indented block. That means the if statement cannot be the blank in Python, but this is not the case with other programming language. Like in C, you can have a blank if statement as well, but in Python there has to be at least one statement inside the if. If you do not want to give any statement inside the if, in that case you can add a pass statement inside in the if statement, if you want to keep that if statement as empty. Now here we go. So I just write one more time this print fan on, okay, this thing. And one more time I just want to write this thing, one more statement inside this, print fan is still on. Okay, now it should execute these two statements. So let's run this, and I'm putting as 36. This time fan is on and fan is still on. Both the things are executed. This was the part of if statement. But if I write one more statement here, print am out of if. So this statement is not the part of the if statement, and even if this condition is false, this will be executed. So let's run this, and let's enter temperature at 30. This time I am out of if, so whatever is there inside this if is not executed. Now let's do one more thing. If I give 3 number of spaces, or 1, 2, 3, sorry, or just one number of spaces to this, and this is the 4 spaces, will it be the correct thing, or is this going to create some problem? As both the statements has got some void spaces, this has a different number of void spaces, but this has a single void space. As both the statements are having some indentation block, or they are shifted right by some spaces, but the spaces are unequal, what will happen in this case if I try to run this code? Whether it's going to be a problem, or it's going to throw an error, or it will be a perfectly fine thing in Python. So let's try. So once I hit enter, so it is showing the uni indent does not match any outer indentation label. So inside a single if statement, every block should have the same indentation or same number of white spaces. Otherwise there will be a problem. Okay, otherwise there could be a problem. So you have to take care of this thing. Every statement inside the if should have the same number of void spaces. And after that you can come out of this if statement. So if statement executes only for once. If the condition is true, whatever you have written inside the if statement will be executed. If the condition is not true, that means the condition is false, nothing will be executed or nothing will happen. Now this is the problem in case of some cases. For example, in case of temperature controlled fan, I want to switch on the fan if the temperature is more than 35 degrees centigrade. But if temperature drops below 35 degrees centigrade, then fan must be off. This is what I am expecting, or this should happen. So in order to do this, the if statement is not sufficient. The if statement is suitable only when you have a single condition and single option to do. So this is the single activity that you have to perform. But in case the temperature is less than 35 degree, then you need not to do anything. In such cases, the if statement is suitable. But if you are talking about the two options for single condition, if the condition is true, do this. Otherwise, the other option you have to activate. In that case, you have to use the else statement. So again, you can write else statement with some colon, and then here you can write print fan off. Okay, so this is what happen. This will happen here. The fan will be off if the temperature is not greater than 35 degrees centigrade. Again, keep in mind the else statement will not have any condition. Always remember, whenever you are writing else statement, do not write any condition here. You just have to write else and colon and the whatever statements you want to execute inside that. So similarly, you can put multiple statements inside the if, and again you can put multiple statements inside the else, but the indentation or the number of void spaces has to be equal. So let's run this simple code. So when I run this code, it is asking for room temperature. So here 45, so the fan is on. This is executed. This is executed. Now let's run one more time and just put 30. In this case, fan is off. The fan is off. Here I am using only print statement to show fan on and off, but in the actual case, there will be a hardware like relay that will control the 230 volt power supply which is connected to the fan, and that will control the fan, switching off that fan. So there will be actual hardware involved. So here I am not talking about any kind of hardware, just we are simulating this thing, we are just building the logic to control the fan. But in actual case, the things could be different, but the same syntax, same structure you have to follow in that case as well. Okay. So here we have discussed that if the temperature is greater than 35 degrees centigrade, so you have to control the fan, switch on the fan will be on, and if the temperature is less than 35 degrees centigrade, in that case the fan will be off. So this is how it will execute. Now one more question, if I do not write these brackets, if the temperature is greater than 35 degrees centigrade only, what will happen? Will it be a valid statement in Python, or will it generate any error? So if I run this code, there is absolutely no error. So these brackets were optional. If you want to put such brackets, you can put there. If you do not want to write any brackets, then totally fine, you can just left if statement without any brackets. Now here again I put 35, and in this case the fan is off because 35 is not greater than 35, it is less than 35. Now one more thing, if I give different void spaces between this if statement and inside this else, what will happen? For example, I add a single void space here, and as usual there are 4 different void spaces here. So will it be error? Initially when we discussed the simple if statement, we encountered an error when I was giving different void spaces inside this if statement. But if I give a different void spaces in this if statement and in the else, will it be an error in Python? So let's check. If I run this by clicking F5, totally fine, no issues with this. If I write here 37, the fan is on, and if I put any value below 35, this is because this is a different block and this is different block in Python. So in a single block, the spaces has to be equal, but not necessarily in multiple blocks. So in different blocks, you can have different void spaces. but I do not recommend this thing to you. You have to give equal number of spaces in all the blocks. Okay, though it is not the error in Python and it is perfectly fine in Python, but I do not recommend different void spaces in different blocks. So I'll recommend you just use equal number of spaces everywhere. Okay, or if you are putting indentation with 4 different void spaces, then follow the same structure in all different blocks, because this will make your code neat and clean and more readable. If you are giving different void spaces in different blocks, that your code will not look better, and it will be very much difficult to read and understand that. So that thing you have to take care. Now this was the second thing that we have discussed. You have a single condition, you just have this condition, and based on this condition you have 2 different options to do. Now first one is this thing and second one is this thing. So the condition is true, this will be executed, and if the condition is false, this will be executed. So this is the if else statement that you will use whenever you will have to use whenever you have 2 different options for a single condition. But in actual case, there can be multiple conditions and multiple options. For example, in case of temperature control fan, you have to not only switch on the fan, but you have to control the speed of fan. For example, if temperature is less than 35 degrees centigrade, the fan will be off. If the temperature is in between 35 to 40, in that case the fan speed should be 1. If the temperature is between 40 to 45 or 41 to 45, in that case the speed of fan has to be 2. And if the temperature is greater than 45 degrees centigrade, in that case the speed of fan must be 3. Okay, and otherwise the speed of fan should be 4. So in actual case, the fan could have multiple gears and multiple speed options, and depending upon the room temperature, you have to control or you have to increase the speed of fan. So this is what we are expecting. Now in this particular problem, you have multiple conditions, multiple statements and multiple options to execute. So in this case, this kind of structure is not suitable. So in that case, if else kind of situation we can use. So let's check that thing and let's discuss this thing. If temperature is less than 35, less than equals to 35, so that I'll cover this thing. In this case, print fan off. Okay. Now the second condition, elif. Okay, keep in mind we are not using else, we are using else if, that is elif. And here I'll write if temperature is greater than 35 and temperature is less than equal to 40. Now this is very much interesting thing. Here we are having 2 different conditions. The first condition is temperature is greater than 35 degrees centigrade, and the second condition is temperature must be less than 40 degree. So that means the temperature is in between 36 to 40 degrees centigrade. So in order to write this, you have to use 2 different conditions. So this is condition number 1 and this is statement number 2 or condition number 2. Again, this is a relational operator, and again this is also less than equal to relational operator. And these 2 conditions are combined together by using a logical operator called AND. So we have discussed logical operator like AND, OR and NOT. So this is one such operator. This is logical AND. And here it will print fan speed equals to 1. Okay, so here also you write the speed of fan equals to 1. And again, if the temperature is greater than 40 and temperature is less than equal to 45, in this case the speed of fan, print fan speed equals to 2, this thing, and again we can write if the temperature is greater than 45 and temperature is less than 50. In this case, the fan speed equals to 3. Okay, this is how we can write this statement, and then I'm not writing any else statement here. Now here, if this condition is true, then this will be executed. If this condition is not true, it will go and test this condition, whether the temperature is between 36 to 40 degrees centigrade. And if this condition is again false, then it will go for the third condition, and if this is false, then it will check this condition. So here only one statement or only one thing will be executed, either this thing or this or this or this, not all at a time. So if this is true, it will not going to check the rest of the conditions, as the condition is satisfied here, and this will be executed. The following part will be executed only when this condition is false. If this is false, it will test this condition, and if this is false, it is going to test this condition, and if it finds that this is also false, then it will execute this condition. Now let's execute this and let's test this. So let's firstly put temperature 30 degrees centigrade. It should print fan off. Yes, it is happening. Now again I'll run one more time, and this time I'll put temperature 36, which is 36 to, or even 37, which is 36 to 40 range. Fan speed should be 1. Here it is happening. Now I'll run one more time, and this time 43 is the temperature, fan speed equal to 2. This is what's happening with this thing. And the last one, that I'll put 48. This time fan speed equals to 3, which is this last value. So it is executing very properly. Now here is the interesting thing. One more time I'll run, and I'll put temperature 60 degrees centigrade. What should happen? What you are expecting? Are you expecting the fan speed should be 3, which is the final value that we have defined? Or are you expecting nothing is going to happen? So once you enter here, nothing is going to happen, because we haven't defined this thing, okay, in our code. So haven't coded anything for this. So in order to do that, you just have to put a default condition, so that what exactly happened here. So all the conditions were false, everything was false when I put temperature equals to 60 degree. Even this was false, it was not less than 35, it was not in between 36 to 40, it was not in between 41 to 45, and again it was not in the range 46 to 50. That's why nothing was happened, okay, and everything was false. Now in that case, if you want to specify that all the conditions are false, in that case, if you want to execute any default condition, in that case you can optionally add this thing, else part. So writing else statement is optional in if, but if you want to have a default option, then you can use the else statement. So else is used to have or execute a default condition in if else statement. So here I'll write fan speed equals to 4, the maximum speeding fan. Now here I'll test, I'll put 60 this time, and it is happening. Fan speed is 4. That means if the temperature is beyond 50, or it is not in this particular ranges, in that case the default value of speed is 4. The fan speed will be 4 in that case. So this is very much interesting thing to understand in if else statement. Now this is how we can define if statement and if else statement. Now you will we are going to discuss how we can use nested if else. So this is all about the else if statement. It's very much simple thing, and it's very much easy and more readable. There is also one thing called nested if else, that means a if statement inside the if. So it's a very much interesting thing that we can check it out whether the how to do that. Okay, so but it's I'll not recommend to use that thing because you have this simple option. So here what we'll check, if the same thing I'll do with the help of nested if else statement. Instead of using else if, I'll write if and inside that multiple if statement. If temperature is greater than 50, you have to print this thing. Or just one more thing, a simple thing I want to do. If temperature is greater than 35, in this case, if I want to check one more thing, if temperature is less than 40, less than equal to 40. Okay, I am doing this only for fan speed 1. Print fan speed equals to 1. Okay, so here what I'm doing, I'm using here if temperature is greater than 35. So I want to check whether temperature is between 36 to 40 in that range. So obviously if the temperature in that range, the first condition is the temperature must be greater than 35 degrees centigrade. If the temperature is greater than 35 degrees centigrade, it will check, it will go inside this and check, it will go inside this, and now this if statement is the part of this if statement, and this statement is the part of this inner if statement. So this entire thing is the part of this if statement, and this is another if statement having one single statement. Now again we will check whether temperature is less than 40, and in that case the fan speed should be 1. So this is what we are expecting, and if I run this and if I put temperature 38, in that case the fan speed is equals to 1. But if I run this and if I put fan equal 30, temperature equal 30, nothing is happening. Now this is very complicated approach of using nested if else statement. So I do not recommend this thing as a beginner. So what you can do, you can simply write this. This thing can be written like this, using a simple if statement and using this a logical operator. So I'll prefer this logical operator. Temperature is less than equals to 40, and in that case you can write print fan speed equals to 1 if you want to do like this. So I'll recommend this option because it's very much simple to read. And if I put 38, then fan speed equals to 1, and if I run one more time and if I put 30, this time nothing is going to happen. So I'll always prefer this kind of approach if I have multiple conditions and you want to do some kind of nesting. So you prefer using the logical operators to combine multiple conditions in a single if statement. So this was all about the decision control. Hope you have understood the core concepts of decision control in Python. In next lecture, we are going to discuss the simple examples. We are going to solve some problem statements using decision control in Python. So stay connected with me, and thanks for watching.